Microsoft just announced Windows 11, and it seems that going forward, we need to have TPM in order to use it. This has created some negative reactions in the community, but I think this is the perfect time for us to explore the world of Linux. For the past years, whenever I talk about using a Linux, I always hear people saying that they have dedicated graphic cards. They don't want to deal with the drivers, especially nvidia. In this video, I'm going to install the nvidia driver in all these distros, and I'm going to time it against Windows. So you can see it is not only easier to install it in Linux now, but it is faster. I also want to put a disclaimer here that I created this video just to encourage people to try out Linux. This is not a tutorial on how to install nvidia drivers because different machines require different installation process. And if you're using an AMD GPU, you don't even have to worry about the driver because AMD has already included all their drivers in the Linux kernel. First things first, let's set a benchmark in Windows. To give you some background, most of the Linux distro can handle both downloading and installing with a single command. So it is only fair for Windows to do the same when we do the comparison. I pause all the automatic updates here to prevent Windows from downloading the nvidia driver to make sure we time it properly. So overall, Windows did pretty good. From downloading all the way to reboot, it took 3 minutes and 7 seconds. Now, let's see what Linux can do. Before we jump into the installation, I want to tell you that I'm using an Asus Zephyrus G14 2020 model. It has an AMD CPU and AMD integrated GPU along with an nvidia 1660 Ti Max-Q. So if you're using an Intel version laptop, the installation process might be different. But that is beyond today's topic. First, we have Ubuntu. It is one of the most popular Linux distributions in the world. If you ever heard of Linux, there is a chance you might have heard of this one because the company behind it has been focusing on the usability and stability for the past 10 years. So after the installation, what we need to do is to go to Additional Drivers and pick up the nvidia driver and hit Apply Changes. I start my clock after I punch in my passcode. Overall, including the reboot after the driver's installation, it took me 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Now you can see we already beat Windows in the first try. So stay tuned, things will only get better. We have Fedora coming next. It is my favorite Linux distribution since 2020 because it is super stable, just like Ubuntu. But unlike Ubuntu, the package selection here is way much newer. So I can play with all the latest toys without sacrificing the stability. I also want to mention that in order for my laptop to work with Fedora, I have to do some tweaks. And again, if you're not using an Asus gaming laptop, you don't have to worry about this. I found a website which has step-by-step tutorial targeting Asus gaming laptop. It's not very hard to do. It's just some copy and paste work. It took me less than 2 minutes to finish. Now we can install nvidia on Fedora. What we need to do is go to Software, enable the third-party repositories, enable nvidia, update the distribution. Here it may take some time depending on how many packages were released after your ISO file. I didn't time it here because technically we're not installing nvidia driver here. So after that, what we need to do is to install the nvidia and CUDA model at the same time and start the timer. I also want to mention that I still need another tweak here to make it work before the final reboot. But I was so confident that it would be fast, so I didn't stop the clock. I featured everything in, and including the reboot, overall it took 2 minutes and 5 seconds for Fedora. Now we have covered a Debian-based Linux and an RPM-based. I want to introduce an Archbase Linux. A lot of people may say that Manjaro is the best Archbase Linux nowadays. But if you ask any Linux veteran, they may say that Manjaro is not purely based on Arch because the company behind it wanted to be stable. So the package you find on Manjaro is not going to be consistent with the ones in Arch repository. The distribution I picked is called Reborn OS. It is purely based on Arch Linux, and you don't have to worry about installing it using command line because it provides you a graphic interface and you can choose whichever packages you want to use during the installation. Here I chose KDE as my default desktop environment because I got tired of watching GNOME all the time. And if you want to learn more about desktop environment and how to customize them, make sure you subscribe because I'm planning to do a tutorial on that later. Now back to the NVIDIA. So the only thing we need to do in Archbase Linux is to type in this command, sudo pacman-S NVIDIA. And after that is finished, go to application menu, search the keyword NVIDIA. You will see an application called Get NVIDIA X Server Settings. Click on that and click install. Click apply, type in your password, apply again, and then it will ask you to reboot after it finished. And the NVIDIA driver will be there after the reboot. And you can see the overall time for this distribution to install NVIDIA is 59 seconds. After showing you all the manual installations, I want to introduce two other distributions to you, Pop! OS and Manjaro. These two distributions were designed for gamers. So if you go onto Pop! OS official website, you can see there's an NVIDIA version available to download. Similarly, if you're installing Manjaro, you don't have to download any NVIDIA version separately. On the startup screen, you just need to choose NVIDIA non-free proprietary driver, and both of them will take care of the driver while installing. I didn't time them separately because there's no way for me to cut out the NVIDIA part, but you can see the NVIDIA is installed properly for both of these distros. And that is everything for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have more tips on Linux, please feel free to comment down below. And I will see you in the next one.